The Boomerang Principle is a fun, easy way for us to begin to open our mind and realize that just like the law of gravity, you're always working with it. And at the Grand Canyon, they may need to put a sign, the law of gravity is strictly enforced here, but it's always at work. Well, there are many other laws always at work in our life, and the one we're really working with right now is the law of giving and receiving, or the boomerang law. What does it mean to give and to have things come back to us? Well, the first thing it means is to absolutely pray, meditate, and have good works. Because what we do on this level is going to come back for us. I shared the story with George Bolt with you because to me that's a beautiful, true story of a person who goes through life and they do the best they can, and then they saw a return on that investment in a huge way. It may happen that way. It may show up in other ways. And then what do we do about those times when we don't know if it's good or if it's not good when it comes into our life? There's a story of a peasant farmer many years ago who had a pretty small area, a small farm. He had one horse, his one son, and his wife, and they worked the land and they made a pretty good living. Well, one day his one and only horse ran away. The neighbors heard this was a terrible thing. All the neighbors ran over and said, "Oh my God, you've lost your only horse. This is terrible." The farmer said, "Maybe, maybe not." A couple of days later, his horse came back, and running behind his horse were 7 other horses. And now all of a sudden, this man had 8 horses. All the neighbors run over and said, "Oh my, look, you are so lucky, you are so blessed, you are a wealthy man. This is such a gift." Maybe so, maybe not. So he built a pen and he had all of these horses, and his son went out and he was working with and trying to tame one of the horses, and he fell off and broke his arm. Now his son was a big help to the father, so once again the neighbors ran over and they said, "Oh no, this is a terrible thing. Your only son has broke his arm." The farmer said, "Maybe so, maybe not." Well, a few weeks after that, while his son was recuperating, here comes the local army. The country has broken out into a war, and they're going household to household, taking every healthy young man they can find and sending them off to war. This particular man had a broken arm, so he was left. Now, the point of the story is, in the context of a life, there are many, many things that happen. Some we will say, "This is great," and some we will say, "This is terrible." The Boomerang Principle says the way to respond is, maybe so, maybe not. And the formula that we work with is prayer, meditation, and good works. Because you see, so often in our life, what tends to happen is when we get stuck, and especially in new thought, we metaphysicalize ourselves. Has anybody ever metaphysicalized yourself? Do you even know what that means? It means, boy, you are stuck in your head and you're trying to figure out, why did this happen? And you can't get off the ground. That is the equivalent of when the Wright brothers finally figured out, they harnessed the law of gravity. And they began to produce airplanes that could fly, and they were flying. And let's say they'd been flying for 2 years, and then all of a sudden a plane hits a group of birds and crashes. Now, it would have been ridiculous for the Wright brothers to have gone and sat back down and taken the whole plane apart and once again trying to start figure out how to fly again, correct? That would have been ridiculous. Yet in our life, when something comes into our life, most of the time, the first tendency is to say, what in my consciousness attracted this? Do we get stuck there? A lot of times we do. What I want us to see today is we're being asked to wake up, to step up, to grow up to a higher level of spirituality and realize that if you are praying, if you are meditating, if you are doing your good works, you've already got an airplane that's flying. Amen? Amen. Turn to your neighbor and say, you've already got an airplane that's flying. All right, so take a deep breath. I've already got an airplane that is flying. And it is a disempowerment for yourself and for the world for you to, every time something comes up, to say, what in my consciousness caused this? I have to go all the way back to square one. You disassemble an airplane every time that happens. It's just like the farmer. Things are going to come and things are going to go. But when the birds crash the plane, now we're discovering something else. Now we have encountered something new. And we have the opportunity to respond, excuse me, at a higher level of consciousness. You see, the boomerang, the first part of it is, be responsible for everything you send out. When I say prayers, you've noticed I always end my prayers, blah, 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 and so it is. And so it is. What you don't know is that in my mind, what I'm saying is, and so, S-E-W, it is. Every prayer, I'm sowing seeds of it is, God is, truth is, light is, what is. And no matter whatever comes into my life, whatever comes into your life, send it out. Send the best blessing that you can. Now, does that mean that you never get upset and have many meltdowns and say things that you don't regret? No, because you're not human if that doesn't happen. If you get mad, then get mad, but do it in a way that is responsible. If you get angry, you better get angry. You better get that angry through yourself and out of your body, and then come back to zero, come back to center, come back to all that is, so we can respond. Yes? I'm asking us to grow up spiritually. Everything is not good. It's not all good. We live in a world of relativity that is at the level of appearances. Things appear good and things appear bad. And yet, we have the power that whatever comes into our life, we touch it. How did we respond this week to the earthquake? Yeah, it's horrible. And so, if someone asks, all right, that's a boomerang that came flying into the face of humanity. Now, some people are wondering what caused this. And if you work with the earth, you probably should be trying to figure out what's going on with Mother Earth. But if I have no clue what caused it, does anybody really have a clue what caused it? No, we don't. But each and every person on the face of the earth is charged with how we respond to this. So how are we to respond? And how do we take this boomerang that came into our life and into the greater life of humanity and infuse it with something that is good? How do we reveal God in all things? Well, the first thing we do is, when something like this happens, I hope you are moved deeply with compassion. I hope that when we see the pictures on television, we can connect with a level of oneness. What if that were my family? What if those were my children without the medicine they need? What if that was my community? And if you really allow that to feel that, it opens your heart. It creates that point of entry that you were talking about. And when we open ourselves and we are moved with compassion, now we are infusing this event with a level of consciousness that has the capacity to heal. Because now we've taken something that has the appearance of being nothing but bad and devastating and terrible. And we're not saying, oh, well, whatever, God must have been in it. That's to stay in the head. We're saying, man, that hurt bad. We're letting ourselves feel it. We're letting ourselves be moved to the point of compassion, to the point of good works, of how am I going to respond? And in my responding, I'm calling forth God. I'm calling forth light. I'm calling forth love, because I'm finding it in myself. Does that make sense? That whatever comes into our life, at the end of Jesus' life, his life ended pretty badly. And yet in the final hours of his life, he did not say, what in my consciousness created this?